Hi, Gal Podjarny. It's so nice to have you on. To me, you're a celebrity. I read your stories. I've heard so much about you, and now I get to have you to speak to you on this video cast, Chat About AI. I'd love for you to tell our audience about yourself because you have both software background, psychology background. Now you're an amazing writer. So I want to talk about all those lives a little bit because they all combine into what we're about to cover here today, and I think make it so powerful.
Thank you, Vicky. Thanks for having me. Celebrity is a bit much, I think, but well,
Go
um,
ahead.
yeah, um, yeah. So I worked as a software developer. It was to be fair, it was mostly to put me through college, as it were. Um, it paid the student fees for my bachelor's degree, which was in psychology. And then I did a master's in psychology and a PhD in psychology in child development. I was a researcher at Carleton University in Ottawa. And then we moved to London um, just because we thought it would be fun, and it is. And and it's yeah, and somehow I became a writer. I'm not entirely sure how that happened. It was a combination of like the hours are better, and I get to sit around and tell myself stories all day, so that's fun. Um, and yeah, I
Stories are
write.
so important. They're so powerful because that's how we learned. I mean, your background in child psychology, how do humans remember anything? We remember everything and pass it on through stories, right?
Yeah,
That's how we used to do it for centuries. It's only recently that we are all so smart and we get to read most of the time and to watch videos, but that was never present in our past lives. So stories is
yeah,
what kind of carried us, right? Through century to century. So tell me
yeah.
about
Because
this fascination with stories. You've recently written stories. Tell us a little more about those. Like, how did they come about? What are they about?
yeah, so there. I recently put out a collection of three stories. It's called Human Fragments, and there it contains three stories that have been written in different times, really. But all of them are a little bit like they've been written a few years ago. All of them, and just now I had. I guess courage to to shape them up and get them out there. And so the collection is three stories. There's Jaded, where Jade, the main character, is exploring a new technology that changes their character. Then there's the banker, which explores what it would be like if we could bank time like we bank money, and how do we get that out of the saving account? And then the third story is Say My Name, which is about Michal. She is an immigrant in London, and she discovers that a doppelganger has taken over her life. Um, and those are the three stories, and they kind of it was a really nice process because I was working on the stories, and then it kind of all fell into place that they're all about like the different things that make us who we are. So that was fun, and it that it all fell into place, and then it was like ready and out. So that was exciting.
Well, I really, really enjoyed them. I would love your story about time and how you came up with that story. That was honestly my favorite. Do you have a story? Do you have a favorite of the three?
Yeah, so I should have looked I should have looked up that specific story, but I heard a story or I read it somewhere, and I can't remember where I came across it, that we waste like thousands of minutes, like waiting for food to cook or waiting at red lights, or like somebody did like a research of how many minutes.
Yeah, I really loved it. And your whole point is like you get these minutes banked, right, at the end of life. And then what could you use it more, like say in the Middle Ages when you're trying to balance the family and the children and everything else that's going on?
I know, yeah, and also like I think when I wrote it, I was recovering from a knee injury, and I was like, and it got me to thinking, like, you know, I really, I really should have enjoyed my body more before, like when I was young. But of course, I was too busy and like, you know, doing all kinds of other stuff, and it's yeah, and I think there's like, you know, there's all kinds of things that you know that we don't have, we only discover later that we should have made time for. So
It's so true. I do the same thing. I'm like, why didn't I? And it's you can't go back in time. You can't fix it. And I'm like, well, I wish I knew better. Because you're right. You're so busy when you're younger and you're trying to get through school and then raise family, and it just goes by so quickly. And I think it's even more, not to be biased, but for women, there's like so much more pressure sometimes with the biological clock, right? And excelling at work at the same time, and just being a great friend and a great family taker, and my goodness, so many roles. And so I think that perspective of like honoring the body and just like, hey, self-care
yeah,
is really really important.
yeah, making the time for yourself is really important, I think.
And that's how we kind of go into AI. I'm going to take us to AI from this, because
All right.
the whole premise right now, the fear as well as the excitement around artificial intelligence is like, hey, we're going to have all this time because machines are going to be doing the work for us, or making the things we used to take a long time to do much, much shorter. Um,
Hmm.
and so if we go with that premise that we're going to have more time, like what are some of the changes that you've seen, maybe whether it's through writing and using AI in writing, or with just psychology and maybe making things more accessible for people that don't have the right tools up to this point? Like, where do you see that opportunity? And maybe what are some of your fears as well?
That's a broad question. Uh,
Very broad question.
I think, I think, let's start with my biggest fear. I think my biggest fear is that the conversation around AI right now is so divisive and binary. Like you're either for it or against it. And I think we have this conversation, this polarized conversation on other topics as well, obviously. But I'm worried that um, you can't really be right? Like you, either way, you're going to piss somebody off. And which, you know, in the age of
Yeah.
Twitter and doxing, that's kind of scary. And like, and I think that yeah, that's my biggest fear. My biggest fear is that we're not going to actually have a real nuanced discussion about it. We're going to have this like Twitter discussion, or sorry,
Yeah.
X discussion, that is not going to be necessarily helpful for something so complex and so pervasive to our lives. So that's my biggest fear. Um, I really think that AI is a tool like any other tool, and we can use it.
Yeah.
Um, you know, we can use it as always. Human can use it for good or for evil, or you know, for to make things better or to make things worse. We can do that, and you know, and that's taken into account that somebody's better is somebody else's worse.
Yeah.
We really, really need to have these conversations, and to think about our relationship with this new tool that we're having, kind of like we had just recently had to do with phones, right? When we had to think about our relationship with, do we want notifications on? When do we want the phone on us? And when do we leave it on the other room, in the other room? That kind of thing. That I feel that conversation is happening now, but we're not having a similar conversation about AI, about like defining our own relationships with it.
Wow, that's so powerful to me because you really posed the question, and I feel like in the right light. What is the relationship that we should be having with AI, right? And how do we manage that relationship? I'm reading a book right now that talks about the relationship of machines and customer care centers, where
Mm,
they listen to conversations between the customer and the employee, and they're constantly giving notifications to the employee about showing more empathy, or how about you ask this question. So the employee is not able to, is managed by the machine. In the past, we might have a
mm.
manager kind of walk the floor and they're like, hey, I've overheard this. But now it's like 100% of the time, the conversation is being managed by the machine. And so
Hmm.
it puts a lot of pressure on the people in call centers, because can you imagine someone's always watching and they're like, oh, smile. How about you do this? Did you ask that? Your voice kind of sounds angry. Maybe you need to tone that down a little bit.
Yeah, I wonder why.
So that
Uh,
relationship of machine, and like we think about us using AI as a tool, as you mentioned, but I'm almost more fearful of machine managing humans. And I see that going into that direction.
yeah, definitely we want to be able to do that the other way around. So, I mean, when you use AI to like write your report or your letter to your boss faster, that's one thing. But so that's you're getting the benefit. But yeah, I don't see. Yeah, I think that the
That's a
machines managing
really
us
tough
is kind of
environment
like,
to work in, right? One of
yeah.
the, I'll give you another example. This was so many years ago, before my kids were born, literally like 20 years or more. Like
Mm,
I wanted to automate something. So I was working as a developer, but I was helping automate call center software. And I sat next to one of the representatives and I watched what they did. And one of the things they did, they were correcting the mailing address, because post office has very strict rules about mailing addresses, and some of the letters were coming back. So everyone in the call center was like rotating for 2 hours every day, 24 hours a day, like updating manually each address to make sure it corresponded to the right format. And I looked at it and I'm like, oh, this would be so horrible if someone asked me to do that. Like, how I think. I'm like, why would you want to do this every day for 2 hours? So I'm like, I'm going to automate this for you, because a machine can look at this address and just give you some exceptions. You could do this in seconds versus you guys are spending 24 hours. So I was like being the hero, right? I'm coming in, I'm going to change all of this. I'm going to make their lives easier. And of course, it was very easy to implement. 2 weeks later, they had this new software. They spent 15 minutes looking through exceptions. And I came back and I said, aren't you happy? Look at this. You have all this free time. Now, you don't have to look at the spreadsheet every day. And they were miserable. And I did not expect that, because they said, listen, we are on the phone like 8 hours a day. It's exhausting. We were looking forward to having 2 hours where nobody was talking to us and we were looking at the spreadsheet. So you just took this away from us. And now we're spending 10 hours on the phone instead of the eight. And
yeah,
I was just like, and being young, I was just in shock, because here I was, ready for my hero welcome. And it had the opposite reaction.
yeah.
And I always use it as an automation story, because it's kind of similar to AI that we're talking about. It's just sometimes when we take things away, make things easier, it doesn't necessarily lead to the happiness or the satisfaction or the improvement in our lives that we might expect.
Yeah, I wonder if the I need to find a word, sorry. Like, I wonder if the factor that comes into that is what is the intended outcome?
That you desire. To your point around the conversation, we really need to think through that, because a business wants more productivity, right? That's in the interest of the
Yeah.
business. In the interest of the human, I would say it's probably to have satisfaction and purpose in their work. So are those going to come closer together, or are we actually going to start drifting further apart? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That could be interesting to
How is
see.
AI going to impact that, right? Because sometimes it's doing the hard thing that gives us the pleasure at the end, right? The fact that we've gone through it and that we've accomplished something, and it's we feel we've learned something from it.
Yeah, absolutely. The Nick Cave said in one of his like red hand files, I love his red hand files, and he said in one of them that like art is about effort, creation is about effort,
Yeah.
and I like that because I think that it's true. I don't know that um, if the AI can make really pretty pictures, right?
Yeah.
The all those tools, they make really pretty visuals, but I don't know that they're making art.
Yeah.
And it's a question to me, like, who are the people who like give the AI the prompt? Are they artists? Because there is a certain effort that goes into that, to make the right prompt and to get the picture to be exactly what you want. But on the other hand, they haven't painted it themselves, right?
Mhm.
But,
Yeah. And
but
is there that
also
sense
like
of
digital art also doesn't like digital artists, although they don't use brush paints, like,
yeah.
I don't know. I think that it's a different kind of effort, and it's really hard for us to really see how that's going to look in 3 and 5 years, right? But we need to be very
Yeah.
mindful that this is happening now, right? Yeah, it's and we need to really think through like what we want our society to look like. I really like Aaron Bastani's vision of fully automated, um, fully automated luxury communism. There we
Mm.
are.
Yeah.
Um, that's his book name, and he has a TED talk as well.
Okay.
Aaron Bastani, and he talks about like how amazing would it be if AI and it's all the stuff that we don't want to do is
Yeah.
automated, and all the stuff, and that leaves us a lot of time for the stuff that we do want to do. But of
Right.
course, if we leave it to like, it sounds like if we leave it to the corporations, that's not what's going to happen. So we need to be very mindful about like what we want from this
Yeah.
tool.
Yeah. And and because digital, I feel like digital intelligence kind of evolves much faster. Just because they doesn't have the human kind of we're as humans we're kind of averse to change. Like we want to change, we want to learn, but it could take us centuries, to really move in the right direction. So the speed with which digital intelligence versus human intelligence evolves, that's the part that I'm a little worried about, that if we don't hone in on our creativity and our strengths of critical thinking and understanding, that the digital intelligence will just naturally, due to productivity improvements, will be pushed by corporations, right? It's like, oh well, we can make so much money and have half our workforce.
Yeah, yeah, and we do need to think, we always talk about like how the AI is going to take the jobs,
Yeah.
but and I think we need as a society to think about that, like what does that mean
Right.
when the salary is not no longer something that
Count
most
on,
people
or
have,
yeah.
right? How do we build like, if you don't have an income, how do most people manage their like outcomes, right?
Right.
Their bills and their
Yeah.
basic needs. But also, I think you were talking about change, and I think
Yeah.
if we come back to stories,
Yeah.
almost almost all stories are about change, right?
Right.
It's how we deal with change. That's our tool to deal with change. I find stories, and so, I'm thinking about the stories that we have currently about AI. They're not good, right? Like
Yeah.
they're really scary.
Yeah.
And as part of I I'm so I'm a writer, and I also work. I also do some work with our family foundation, Disrupt,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of trying to steer us in the direction of helping, or even starting to imagine, creating a space to imagine an alternative,
Yeah.
right? And I think that we desperately need stories that tell us how we can manage AI in a way that, that is helpful to humans, not harmful, and that kind of thing. And what does it mean? I mean, because like we said, there's always
Yeah.
somebody's better is somebody else's worse. So we need to think about how we make sure that that we think about it um, in a way that doesn't leave behind like large portions of the population. Um,
That is so true. And I work for a nonprofit as well. It's called
mm,
Pebble Tossers, and they help essentially families volunteer together. And I just really love it because I feel like to raise good people, you have to get them in service of their community and to show them different ways that they can contribute, right? Because
yeah,
children love to help, and so this is their way of helping. Um, and so I'm very passionate about it. But one of the things we always struggle with is fundraising and getting grants and just supporting all the programs we have, including the teen leadership program. And so when I had time, I was like, let's use AI. Let's write our grants using AI. And we're trying to implement a startup grant boost as part of that. But it's that idea of like, it's okay. Like you're already short on time. Like, how do we get you what you need and spend more time so you can be out in the community helping instead of trying to write up these grants, right? Whether you're going to win them or not. So,
absolutely. We have, as part of our work, we've helped to um, um, a charity called Access Social Care, and
okay.
they help people access their social care rights, which is surprisingly difficult to do. And we've helped them to build a chatbot that,
Okay.
and that made, and that was, they started kind of before ChatGPT, but now it's, it's more, it's advancing more quickly. But their chatbot, you can put in the conditions that you have, and it will ask you questions, and that will give you a list of the rights, like what are you entitled to, and the benefits you're entitled to, and it will help you. They work with, it's a charity that works with that is consisted of lawyers, right? And
Right.
so they've sat down and they've put together a template of the different letters that you might need to send to your, the social worker to get the stuff that you deserve. And that has taken, and now they don't have to do that kind of thing. They can, take the more complex cases and do more work on that. So it's that has been a really good use. Like it's a good example. I like it because it's putting an AI to good use
Right.
to
Yeah.
help people. With Yeah, so that's one of
That's huge. That's huge, right? That's a huge win because then more people can have access to that information and get the services that they need.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I love that. I feel like there is so much opportunity there, but
Absolutely.
to your point, like a lot of people are fearful of it. I sense it, especially in nonprofits. There is a lot of fear associated with using AI. So, how
Yeah.
can we tell better stories about how it is helpful, whether it's through chatbot or through applying for more grants, or just managing your day to day operations and CRM kind of things that you might need in
Yeah,
your business.
yeah, and I think, and I have a friend who has dyslexia,
Mhm.
and I was talking to her about the AI, and she loves it,
Yeah.
right? And we were talking about like how, if we're talking about ethical use, can we ethically, like, deny people who can use this? This is leveling the playing field for her, because it used to take her hours to write a reference letter, and now she can do it in minutes. because the AI helps her and gives her like the structure. And she was talking about how like it helps her make sentences. Her thoughts are there, but they don't come out as sentences.
Right.
And the AI helps her make sentences out of it. And so I think that's amazing when you can do that. Um, I think that generally ethical thinking requires a diversity of perspectives, right? And if we have diverse stories about the AI or about people who use the AI, if we try to bring all the stories in, right? And listen to people's fears and listen to people's excitement and ideas, and then together we can, figure this out. I just
Yeah.
need that. It requires a lot of listening, and it's a
Well, I think this is your next project, and I would love to collaborate. We write stories about people using AI, right? Because it is, I mean, the more you talk about it, and I can see your excitement behind it, but I think it is so powerful, right? It's through stories that we're going to really impact the adoption of this technology, because I do feel like it does, whether we like it or not, and there's a lot of discussion that needs to be had. It is going to be technology we need to learn to live with in one capacity or another. And it would be good to live with it for good, right? And
yeah,
make that choice.
yeah. I would much rather see the
Yeah,
AI helping us instead
right.
of managing us, right?
Exactly, right? That's what I want to see too. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't, it's hard enough with a human manager. Can you imagine the machine managing you too? I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. Yeah, it's so powerful, the stories. And I love your, I think I always think about your psychology background, because I learned a lot about neuroscience and psychology. I do not have a degree in it. I went through
Mm,
the typical computer science MBA path.
yeah.
And for me, the psychology, as I've done more and more work, like in the field working with customers, I'm like, that's the number one thing that I find impacts the success or failure of any of my projects. It's not the technology ever. It's always the human communication. It's always taking accountability. It's always convincing people that they should do something maybe they don't feel like doing, or the other way around. So all these skills, they're not really taught as part of computer science, right? They're really building empathy, listening. It's
Yeah.
something that I've had to develop and find important from many years and many interactions. But like looking back, I wish I would have done this earlier, because that's the strength, that's the power of the human spirit, right?
Absolutely. And I think that I would go further back and say it shouldn't be taught in university. University is way too late.
Yeah,
We should teach it much, much earlier. It should be, you have maths, you have English,
right.
and you have listening skills.
Agreed. 100%. And
Yeah.
empathy and kindness, right? Because if we
Yeah.
can encourage that, and I think it just takes you it gives us a huge, it will always give us a huge advantage over
Hmm.
machines, because
Yeah.
machines will never be able to, or at least I can't imagine right now that they will be at the same level very quickly in terms of kindness and moral values and empathy as we can kind of. I think that's a human, hopefully a human advantage for a little while.
Yeah, and there's that and the embodied experience, right? But I don't
Yeah.
know if that's um,
Oh, I love that. This has been an incredible discussion. We need to tell AI stories, right? In
yeah.
order for us to really manage through this incredible change this that we're lucky enough to be a part of. I think it's an in a once in a lifetime, as they say, opportunity. It could go either way, but we have a way to shape it, and we can shape it through stories.
Yeah.
Thank you so much today, Gal. I really appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed this, and look forward to more stories from you.
Thank you so much for having me, Vicky.
Thank you.